appreciate your introduction and getting our housekeeping stuff out of the way. For those who don't know me, my name is Laura Campbell, and I'm one of your co-chairs this advisory council. I am with Farm Bureau. I'm going to start us off today, and then because we've got this technology thing, hopefully a little bit more down pat, we're going to kind of go to a little bit more of our normal way that we run these meetings, in which each of our co-chairs is going to kind of take charge and run our group through different sections of the meeting. So I'm going to handle us to start off right off the bat, and then we'll turn it over to Brian to continue us on. So if you remember from last time, what we did was we went through our list of members. We want to identify, first of all, who are council members who are online, and then we'll ask anybody who is not a member but who is let's see, I see names here for most of the folks who have logged on. I'm going to be asking folks who are on the phone to identify yourselves, just so we've got the information down for a recording of everybody who is participating in the meeting. And like we did last time, because that seemed to work pretty well, and so that I don't have to go through the member list multiple times, when I ask for your name or who's representing your organization, I'm also going to ask you for whether or not you approve of today's agenda, and also whether or not you approve of the draft meeting minutes that were sent out to you from our previous meeting. So if you have a chance and can follow along with the handout that you were sent via email for those draft meeting minutes, I'm going to be asking for both of those things as we go through the roll call. So we'll do kind of all of this at once. So again, remember, you're making any comments or any suggestions or your approval of today's agenda, and you're also giving in any comments, suggestions, or your approval of our April 21st meeting minutes. Any questions or issues before I start running through our list? All right, I am hearing and seeing none as I'm going back and forth through the chat. So I'll go through our list of members for the council. If you are here as an alternate for your council member, feel free to jump in when I call that council member's name. You can just let us know that you're here as an alternate for them, and then we'll make sure and capture the rest of the folks. And again, you'll indicate that you're here, and then you'll tell us whether or not you've got any changes for today's agenda and for our April 21st draft meeting minutes. Margaret Bettenhausen. Okay. Tammy Newcomb. Okay. Charlie Scott. All right. Chris Alexander.
I'm here. I do not have any changes to the agenda, and I approve the draft meeting minutes.
Okay, thank you. Doug Needham.
Present, and no, I approve the agenda and the meeting minutes.
Okay, thank you. James Clift. James, you're still muted if you're still trying to talk. Okay, Steve Kaler? Kohler? Is it Kohler or Kaler?
Kohler.
Kohler, sorry.
Yep, no problem. No changes to the agenda or minutes.
Okay, thank you. Tom Zimnicki?
Here, and no changes, and approve.
All right, thank you, Tom. Dave Hamilton.
Okay, I'm here and I approve the minutes as written and the agenda is fine.
All right, thank you, Dave. Frank Edowajicek. And don't forget, if you're indicating that you're here, you need to unmute yourself.
There we go.
There we go.
Now. I'm here and I approve the minutes and the agenda.
All right, thanks, Frank. Jim Nicholas.
I am here and I approve the minutes as presented and the agenda is fine.
All right, thank you, Jim. Mike Gallagher.
I'm here and I approve both the minutes and the agenda.
All right, thanks, Mike. Pat Stetskevitz.
Hi, Laura. I'm here.
Hi.
And I approve the agenda and the minutes.
All right, thank you. Jim Johnson. Okay. John Yelich.
I'm here. I approve the agenda and the minutes as presented.
Okay, thanks, John. Brian Eggers.
I'm here and I approve the agenda and one edit for the minutes. Let the record show that I was there on the phone, not absent at our last meeting. It did drop at the end, but I was there.
Okay.
Thank you.
Christine, did you get that change?
I did, thank you.
Great, thanks. Okay, Brian Burrows.
I'm present and I approve of the agenda and the minutes and the modification to it.
Okay. And I am here. And Scott DeBoe emailed me saying, or actually Rachel Proctor emailed me saying she is running a little bit late. She's going to be here for Consumers Energy, so she's going to be joining us. Rachel, are you on yet? Okay. Buddy Sebastian. Okay. Jason Walther.
Hey, we're both, Kelly and I are both here and we approve of the minutes in the agenda.
Okay.
Hey, Laura, this is Mike Frederick for the Groundwater Association. I apologize. I hit the wrong button when you called his name and I hung up.
Oh, that's all right.
So I'm technologically handicapped here. So
Okay.
Buddy can't be on here, but obviously I am. So you're
Okay.
stuck with my ugly mug.
Oh, that's all right. We enjoy having you there, Mike. Do you have anything you need to change on the agenda or the draft April 21st minutes?
Nope.
All right. Kyle Rora. Okay. Tom Frazier. Okay. Are there any council members or alternates who are on that I have not called yet?
Hi, Laura. This is Abby Eaton. I'm here for MDARD.
Hey, Abby. Do you have any changes that you want to propose for the agenda or for the April 21st draft minutes?
Nope, the minutes are fine and no changes.
Okay. Anybody else? Alternates or council members that I have not called yet?
Laura, this is Chris Alexander. Tammy Newcomb contacted me to let me know that she is going to be on as soon as she can, but she had a conflict, so she may be joining us periodically.
Okay.
This is Clyde Dugan. I'm out as an alternate for Pat Seskevich, but he's here.
Okay. All right. Anybody else?
Laura, this is Emily Finnell with the Michigan Office of the Great Lakes.
Okay. All right, who else do we have that we have not called yet who's on our meeting? If you are not a council member or not an alternate.
This is Nathaniel Schaff with Eagle.
Okay,
Jim Milne with Eagle.
thank you, Jim.
Matt Tomlinson with Eagle.
Pat, okay. So I heard Pat, but I did not hear who else was starting to speak.
That was Ralph Heffner with USGS.
All right, thank you, Ralph. Who else we got?
Clay Dupree with Eagle.
Sorry, I heard Dave Lush and then
Clay Dupree with Eagle.
Clay. All right, thanks.
Yep.
Matt Tomlinson with Eagle.
Okay, thank you, Matt.
Jeremiah Asher, MSU.
Thank you, Jeremiah.
Bob Otwell with Flow.
Sorry, who are you with, Bob?
I'm on the board of Flow up in Traverse City.
All right, thank you, Bob. Anybody else?
Laura, this is Brian. Laura, this is Brian Burrows. Taylor Ritterbush, my alternate to you, is present on the call.
All right, thank you.
Hey, this is Ellie Velati from Michigan DNR.
Troy Zorn from Michigan DNR.
Sorry, I wasn't able to hear the last one from DNR.
Troy Zorn.
Troy, all right, thanks, Troy.
Laura Dowd, UmGuard.
Thank you, Laura. Anybody else who hasn't had a chance to identify yourself yet? All right. I am hearing and seeing none. Christine, help me out. Do we need some kind of like a motion or something to make the change to the minutes, or can we just make that since it's just a matter of the list of people present?
I think it's a minor enough change that it doesn't need a motion, but I will leave that up to you, Madam Chair.
Okay. I guess I'll ask if there's any objection to us just making that change from council members.
None.
All right. Thank you, everybody. I appreciate it. I'm going to go ahead and move us on to our next agenda item and turn it over to my co-chair, Brian, to handle our next segment.
Okay, thank you, Laura. Moving right along, we have a program staff update from Jim Milne. Jim, welcome.
Thank you, Brian. Give me a second while I switch gears here. Okay, hopefully everyone that's on a computer, not the phone, can see the agency update slides. Is that correct?
I see a slide that says outline.
Okay. Well, good afternoon. This is the agency update for Eagle's water use program. I'm going to start out by talking about informing the council of new phone numbers that have been issued for the rest of the water use program staff. And then I'm going to present some of the program metrics for program year 11, which started in July 2019 through up to date June 2020. Then I'm going to update you on 3 new stream gauges that USGS recently installed. I'm also going to update you on some watersheds where USGS is collecting miscellaneous stream flow measurements for Eagle. We're going to update the water use staff contact info on the water use program's webpage, and I can also email out the slides to the council members. So I think council members may have gotten this beforehand already, but we will post the slides on the webpage, and I can email them out to anyone else who didn't get it. So now everyone in the unit, I'm pleased to say, has now been issued a state-issued iPhone, and those numbers are displayed. That's going to make it easier for the water use staff to work remotely, since they don't have to call their desk phones in Con Hall and then get the voice, write down the voicemail, then return phone calls. So an efficiency gain for the program. The water use program year runs from July 9th through July 8th of the following calendar year. These totals are for the period from July 2019 through June 2020. The statutory deadline for making conventional site-specific review decisions is 10 business days. The temporary layoff days are affecting our SSR timeliness metrics, but we're still doing pretty well, all things considered. To date, this year, we've gotten 148 SSRs submitted. 42 of those decisions were not made within the 10 days. We still have a total of 16 SSRs still pending. That means our percentage of SSR decisions that are made within the 10 days is 74.5%. And the average number of days to make a decision on an SSR is 9. Our compliance metrics are totals for the period between July 2019 and June 2020. Amended registrations are for large quantity withdrawals that were installed and or operated differently than what were authorized either by the tool, water withdrawal assessment tool, or by a site-specific review when Eagle concludes that there is enough stream flow available to authorize the as-built, as-operated withdrawal characteristics. After the fact, registrations are issued when there is enough stream flow available to authorize unregistered large quantity withdrawals after the fact. Missing pump information compliance communications are sent when we have a well log that is missing pump information. Usually that's because the property owner installs the pump at some time after the well was completed, for example, a horizontal well installation.
Jim?
Yeah.
Could you advance your slides? I'm not sure that us folks on the phone are seeing them advance. We're still on outline.
Oh, okay. Yes.
Thank you, Christine. Correct.
Oh, okay. Apologize. Problem is that my speaker notes are on one monitor and the council is on another monitor. Okay.
There you are.
Are you seeing the compliance metrics slide now?
Yep, we sure are.
Yeah.
Okay, great. Sorry about that. Problem is that if I use the version that was sent out to the council, it didn't have my speaker notes. You don't want me winging this. Okay, so as I was saying, I think I had gotten up to after the fact registrations that we issue when there's enough stream flow available to authorize unregistered withdrawals after the fact. If we run across a missing well log with missing pump information, we have a missing pump information. Compliance communication is sent out to get that pump information recorded. Usually that's when the well is installed sometime after the driller installs the well, for example, a horizontal well. The first violation notices so far 27. If we don't have the violation brought back into compliance, we have to send out a second violation notice. So far, we've sent 2 of those, and to date, we've closed 14 violations. That means that they were successfully closed out after the property owner came back into compliance with Part 327. And to date, we have received 11 complaints. Okay, can everybody see a public water supply pre-screen review slide?
Yep.
Yes.
Okay. The update to that, Jill has authorized 2 of the public water supply pre-screens that we do for Drinking Water Division, Commerce Road, Wolverine Lake in Oakland County, and Mishaway Senior Housing Development up in Otsego County. Jill performs pre-screening reviews, essentially is the same thing as doing a site-specific review for Eagle's Drinking Water Division for proposed newer and increased Type 1 municipal water supply capacity. The Safe Drinking Water Act requires newer increased Type 1 water supplies to also meet the Part 327 standards in terms of not causing adverse resource impacts, in addition to the other criteria that are within the Safe Drinking Water Act. Okay, if everything works, you should now see a slide with new USGS stream gauges. USGS recently installed 3 gauges for us. The first one is Osborne Drain at Dewey Lake Road in Cass County. Second one is Dowagiac Creek at Dutch Settlement Road, also in Cass County. Those locations are very close to 2 of the locations where Todd Feenstra installs stream gauges as part of the Cass County study. Both Osborne Drain and Dowagiac Creek are cold transitional stream watersheds, so 2 of the more sensitive watersheds that we have. The third gauge is on Dickinson Creek at Historic Bridge Park in Calhoun County. That's also a cold transitional stream. Okay, hopefully you're seeing a miscellaneous flow stream measurement slide.
I am, but Jim, I have a quick question for you before you move on to that. And I apologize for not knowing this. You mentioned of the new USGS stream gauges that have been put in, that the one at Dowagiac Creek was close to one of the stream gauges that had been installed for the Cass County study. Are those Cass County study stream gauges still in, or were they removed when the study ended?
Last time I talked to Todd, they were still in place.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, on to miscellaneous flow measurements. In addition to the stream gauges that USGS installs for us that collects continuous stream flow data, stream stage and stream flow data, they also go out and collect miscellaneous flow measurements. Those are one-time stream flow measurements. The sites that are in green, USGS goes out and collects 3 measurements during the irrigation season. Basically July to maybe September. There's also 5 locations shown in red where, in addition to 3 measurements during the irrigation season, we asked them to collect a measurement before the start of the irrigation season, and then 1 in the fall after the irrigation season is over. And as you can see, there's some in Muskegon and Ottawa County. The bulk of the locations are down in Southwest Michigan, from Jackson over to Berrien County. And with that, is there any questions that anybody has?
Jim, this is Laura. I wanted to just ask you a little bit about kind of the experience with reaching out to water users regarding after the fact registrations or well log discrepancies, or or some of the other compliance things that you're checking up on. Can you talk a little bit about response that you've been getting, or how it's been to get folks into the system, or if there's anything either that we should be aware of or can help with in terms of outreach or helping these landowners understand what's going on when they're getting these communications from Eagle?
Sure. Well, one thing, we can always do more in the way of outreach to property owners, well drillers, irrigation and equipment suppliers, other interested parties. We've got one work group going on right now under the data collection committee that was Jen Yelich, Buddy Sebastian, myself, and Anita Lattiser from our Eagle Drinking Water Division, looking at a number of the recommendations that were made in the Water Use Advisory Council's 2014 report concerning ways to improve well logic and coordination with the drillers. So that's ongoing. We could do further outreach explaining. Let me back up a step. What happens when we get a new site-specific review is we do what's called a compliance review, which is for the watersheds that are projected to be depleted by the proposed withdrawal. We look at the well logs in well logic within the affected watersheds, compare those to the large quantity withdrawal registrations, and compare that to the annual water use reporting data that's submitted either to MDARD for ag withdrawals or to Eagle for all other types of withdrawals. So hopefully, if there's a large quantity of withdrawal registration, we are able to match that up with a well log and the location, well depth, pump capacity, among other characteristics, are the same. Frequently, that is not the case, so we have to make communications to the property owner. If, for example, there's a well log well log without a pump record installed, we'll need to send that out to the property owner, copy the well driller if we know who that is, and send them the pump record form for them to complete and send out to the local health department. Eventually to Drinking Water and Eagle, and that gets entered into well logic. There's a bit of a time delay involved in that. So that's one area that the work group that John Yelich is heading up is looking at. If there is a requirement in Part 327 that if the well is installed or operated differently than what was authorized either by the tool or by the site-specific review, that their property owner is required to notify Eagle, basically to give us a chance to check the as-built, as-operated characteristics and make sure that they are not going to cause an adverse resource impact. That requirement is, we're getting the word out, but there's a long way to go to get that word out to all the property owners. So further opportunities with outreach with MSU Extension, Farm Bureau, Ag Irrigation Suppliers, Michigan Groundwater Association. We'll talk to anybody and everybody basically to make that requirement better known. So we'll check that. We'll compare the as-built records, as-operated records. If there is enough stream flow available to authorize the withdrawal, we'll go ahead and amend the registration and send the copy of the amended registration out to the property owner. If we come across a previously unregistered withdrawal, and like I said, if there's enough stream flow available to authorize it, we will send them an after-the-fact registration. For those watersheds that do not have enough water available to authorize it, then we're in a violation situation where we would send out a violation notice to the property owner that would outline their options for coming back into compliance. Does that pretty much answer your question, Laura? Is there
Yeah, yeah. And I know you talked about there, you know, and I agree that there's an opportunity for us to do more outreach and help landowners kind of understand that process and help that go a little smoother. Is there anything that the department can provide us, or talking points or anything like that? Because I mean, I do get a lot of calls from farmers who are like, I got this weird letter from Eagle. Why did I get this? What do I have to do? You know, and just understanding from talking to you, I've said, okay, here's what they're doing. Here's what they're trying to get. Just, you know, answer the letter and give them whatever information that they're asking for. But I think having some talking points that maybe we can put out proactively to say, if you get a letter, you know, here's what you should do. I think that would be helpful. And maybe that's something that partners either in the council or folks that you're working with, well drillers, Farm Bureau, other, you know, other organizations might be able to publish that or find some use for it to be able to get out to our members.
This is
Yeah,
Mike
I definitely agree.
Go ahead, Jim. I'm sorry.
Oh, I definitely agree that there's more that we can do. We've got a draft outreach article that we need to do the final stages of revising that and getting that out to some of the stakeholder groups, and hopefully they can share that in their newsletters, magazines, whatever publications their organizations have. We'd be happy to work with any of the stakeholders on the council. If you've got meet and greets, any programs going on, of course, a lot of that has been restricted due to the COVID-19. As things are loosened up and we get more people holding these types of forums, by all means, let us know. We'll be glad to get somebody out there and talk with you.
Jim, this is Dave Hamilton. I've got a couple questions too. I think you gave the number of, there was 148 SSRs this year so far. Do you know what percentage that is of the total number that came in into the tool? And then the second part of that question is, how does that percentage compare with the last couple of years?
I don't have that immediately handy, Dave. I definitely can get that. I'm planning on having that for the August meeting when we have to do our annual legislative report in July. So we'll have those figures among other statistics available. So if you're okay waiting till the August meeting, but if anybody wants it before then, let me know. And once we have it pulled together, we'll get it out to you guys.
Yeah, that's fine, Jim. Thanks.
Laura, this is John Yelich.
Hey, John.
I just wanted to echo a couple things that Jim had said, that we had put some notes together on this and drafted up. And what Jim said, excuse me, is accurate, is that we need to do more outreach. And what we have determined is that just what you said, people are getting a letter, they don't understand it. And we felt that getting summary points that are critical, because it's the applicant that's responsible. And there seems to be a misunderstanding that it's a driller or it's a irrigation. It's not. It's actually the applicant, and most of those are agricultural farmers. And so we feel that we just need to do more outreach so that they understand is they're obligated to go ahead and do it. And one of the things that we became aware of in our discussions was, for example, a farmer may say, I'm going to install the well myself. And so he's taking the irrigation supplier, he's taking the driller out of it.
John, I think you cut out here a little bit.
We've lost you, John.
John muted himself. So John, you need to mute yourself again. There you go.
Okay, sorry. Okay, where did I stop? I don't want to repeat myself.
Talking about the farmer taking the driller out of it.
Yes, and the farmer, for example, decided that they didn't want to put the well in this year, and so they've taken the driller out of it, and they've taken the irrigation supplier out of it too, and said, I'm going to do it myself because I don't want to pay for it. And so the dilemma that we have is they go ahead and do it, and they are required to go ahead and report that. And so that's where we wanted to have more communication, at least through the newsletters and other things, so that they were aware that they're the primary responsible party in this. And so they have a time limit and everything else to do this. And so even if it's been delayed, they need to notify people that it's been delayed so that they know it's in place. So we'll work on that letter and get it off to you so that we can have a couple of the people with newsletters review it so we can see that we've hit the right points that you talked about.
Good.
Thanks, John.
Anybody else? Any more questions for Jim?
This is Mike Frederick. Yeah. Jim, you mentioned amending the well registrations. Talk to me a little bit about what that process involves.
Okay. Well, that may be a matter of the lat long coordinates for the location have changed.
So is that more like a minor, is that more like a clerical error or a reporting error or something like that, where you guys have been able to verify that?
We go off of the final well log that was submitted by the driller, which may be, when we issue a registration either through the tool or through an SSR, that will include the lat long coordinates for the well, the casing depth for the well, and the pump capacity and the pumping schedule. So when the well, after the driller completes the well and submits the well log, any or all of that information may have changed for various reasons. They may have ended up drilling the well in a different spot, or they may have gone to a different depth for a better yield. The pump capacity may have changed. So the amended registration will basically match what the well log, the as-built, has completed well characteristics, and get that out to the property owner for their records. And then if we have the driller identified, we'll copy the driller on that.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Yep.
Anybody else? Jim, thank you for the good report.
Thank you.
I'm going to back up a little bit here. I was using the wrong agenda. I clicked on my calendar agenda. I apologize, you guys. And as a result, I missed line item number 5, which is public comment. And so I want to go back and open up the floor. Comment. If anybody from the public has any comment on today's agenda or our information, now is the time to speak. Going once. Going twice. Any comments from the public? Hearing none, we will close the public comment section and move on to Christine Spitzley and the legislative report process. Christine.
Thank you, Brian. Good afternoon, everyone. So the next few slides are going to be an outline of what we think the process is going to look like to update the 2014 report as required. So Jim, you can show me there. Thank you. So as most of you know, the 2014 report was a comprehensive list of recs. It was 200 pages long, and it had limited cost and budget analysis provided. So it really, looking at it fresh as someone who wasn't involved with it, it's a very comprehensive report, but it was a little bit difficult, I'm sure, as you're working through this, to suss out how are we going to accomplish the things that need to be done and what are the priorities. Next slide. So in talking to the executive committee and other group leaders, the goals for 2020 for the December report is to make it more concise, to make it easier to understand, to really highlight the achievements that have taken place since 2014, and to limit the recommendations. So it's not going to be a reiterative laundry list, but more focused, more prioritized, and they'll be accompanied with implementation strategies. We're only going to do digital format. And the goal is to provide a very clear one voice to the legislature. So next, thank you. So for 2020, the recommendations will be sorted by topic and data versus committee, and the committees will not be identified in the report. And this is intended to be the first of an ongoing series of prioritizations. So this is not the only time we're going to do this, but this is, the first round of prioritizations and moving forward. Each of the committees is going to be asked to provide 3 to 5 recommendations, and within those specific items, attach budgets and costs. And the implementation committee will then prioritize the recommendations. So the recommended format, and again, this is what we think. This is how we think it's gonna work in June. We'll see what it looks like in November. But we would ask that you'd provide the recommendation, like the title and the name of your recommendation, and a synopsis, like clearly explain the issue, the impact, the anticipated outcomes, what the recommended action is, who's going to do it, so who will implement this recommendation, some cost analysis, some funding recommendations, where should the funding come from, and if there's going to need to be any legislative changes, what would those be? And also the time frame. How long do you anticipate it will take this from start to finish to be accomplished? So next step, June and July is the opportunity for the committees to rank their recommendations. We're hoping that each committee can come up with 3 to 5 recommendations, the things they think are the most important, and then provide those to the implementation committee in August for them to review and prioritize. Again, this is not going to be, committees are not going to be seen in this report. The committee work will be behind the scenes. And then in September, we'll be putting the report together based on the recommendations from the implementation committee, and then present a draft report to the full Water Use Advisory Council in October. Then November, taking comments that you have and editing them, and then the final report can then be submitted on time in December to the Michigan legislature. So at this time, I would ask if you have any questions, or if any of the people on the implementation committee or anyone else has any comments or suggestions.
This is Doug Needham, Implementation Committee. So no, Christine, thanks for going through that review. And there is a lot of similarities from what I'll be reporting on our subcommittee too. But one question that I had that we discussed, and it's kind of a prioritization there, that if each committee is going to come up with 3 to 5 recommendations along with costing that, we don't really know what are kind of the hot topics going forward, that would go to the full council for review or recommendations. So if we've got, I'm not really quite sure how many subcommittees we have, because it seems within committees we've got subcommittees. But if we had 10 items and they all have to be costed out, that's a lot of work. When in reality, if we just need the cost, maybe the top 5, but it seems that the full council should be helping prioritize what are those top 5 so that we're not spinning our wheels.
Okay.
Good feedback, Doug.
So are you, let me see if I understood this for clarity. So that the recommendations should be made without cost attached to them and then sent to the implementation committee in August, and then cost is attached after?
Well, and that's something that we're kind of looking at is once all these ideas come in and we try to group them and sort them together. Now, Data and Models Committee are working very closely together. We've got a lot of committee members that are on different subcommittees, so it makes it really kind of useful to do that, to make sure that that discussion. But looking at past recommendations and looking forward is what are some of the new recommendations from the new Ideas Committee, and I forget the technical name of that. Is there a kind of like what you mentioned, no committee names, but is there a theme that these can fall under? And if a theme has certain items that would flow with it that makes sense once it's all sifted and organized, maybe that's the point that we say, okay, you know, we want to quote, improve communication between WellLogic and the WUAC. So you say, okay, well, here's kind of a goal, but now we've got 5 or 6 different items underneath it. I don't know if everyone needs to cost all those 5 or 6. Now, if it's simple, then that's one thing. But if it revolves kind of getting into a little bit more depth, that's where I thought it would be nice, at least if the full council said, hey, you know what, we like the idea of the top 3, not really 4 and 5, but 6 is also a good one. So now as a whole council, why don't you go out and just cost the ones that we have agreed to as a full council?
Doug,
Jim Nicholas. The intent of the model committee is to do our recommendations and not, they would incorporate anything from the subcommittees we have, and we would associate a cost with those. We're not expecting the implementation committee to come with a cost on stuff that we've been working on. So if the number is 3 to 5 for the models committee, then there'll be 3 to 5 recommendations with a cost. Is that correct, Dave?
Yes, that's our plan. And Doug, I think what your thoughts are good thoughts, and I guess what I would suggest is that the implementation team's got a pretty good idea of what's coming in the pipe from the different other committees. And I think one of the tasks maybe of the implementation committee is kind of what are the connections, so that if we're going to kind of group things together, what does that look like? And then I would say that as everything comes in the end of August, early September, maybe the implementation committee could have its first discussion with the council as a whole as to this is what we're thinking as far as priorities go, but we really need some feedback from the council to start fleshing this out. So I guess that's what I would suggest.
Yeah, and that certainly makes sense. I just what I was trying to prevent was maybe so many people going out and trying to cost tasks that may or may not get done. But no, as to say, it's no problem having all the costs involved in there. I just wanted to throw that out for a thought and discussion.
Hey, Doug, this is Laura, and I know we've talked about a little bit about this too. And as I think about it, and as I've been kind of listening to the discussion here, I do think there's value for wherever possible that because these subcommittees are already, they're already identifying not just items that generally need to get done, but what they find are the highest priorities of what needs to get done first. The fact that they're able to provide those costs and really kind of in the implementation committee, maybe ours is more, maybe like Dave said, we have a pretty good sense of, at least in general, what the committees are working on. That really our role is kind of just to be more coordinators in terms of making sure, all right, these fit together, they've all got costs associated with them. It's not our job, obviously, to decide how much the legislature is going to devote to this. It's our job to say these are our top priorities, and and this is how much we need to get started on all this stuff because it's all important. But of the 70 things that were in the 2014 report, here's what really needs to get done first, and here's how much it'll cost you to do it.
Okay, I appreciate it. That sounds good.
Good. Any other questions for Christine? Comments?
Thank you.
Christine, it's a good path forward. I appreciate that extra diligence and work there. Brian Burrows, I'll hand the meeting off to you at this point.
All right. Thank you, Brian. Hello, everybody. Good to be with you electronically at the least. We're going to go into committee updates, and if we roll the slide one more, we'll start with the data committee. Tom, you still good with me giving the update, or would you like to say anything about it, or?
No, you're good, Brian. Thanks.
Okay. Go ahead and advance one more. Okay. So just to bring everybody up to speed on what the data committee's been doing, recap is that we have reviewed all of the previous recommendations, basically from environmental monitoring last time and inland lakes and streams last time, all of them that were relevant to our committee. And we refreshed ourselves on the work that needs to be done with each one and its status. There was one or two that we thought were better handled by the models committee. Pass those off, but I think that our committee kind of also, I think, realized that within these previous recommendations, there really is still absolute need and priority for us to work within those to see them more fully addressed. And so we really have not been spending a lot of time on any kind of new topics, but we are trying to cover and come up with game plans for how to best implement the previous recommendations. We have organized our work into a couple of different modes of operation. The committee as a whole is directly discussing basically data acquisition and or data procedures within the tool. I will say that that will probably be one of the principal recommendations that will come before everybody in the implementing past recommendations committee. We will be trying to put on the table what priorities and investments are needed in various forms of new data to support the program. There may be some other ones that are just recommendations that may not come with any significant financial investment. They're just things that need to be clarified on how we procedurally operate different elements. I think we have a subcommittee or a work group that is addressing and trying to talk through how to communicate a vision for an overall state water data management system, kind of integrated databases, which ones exist, what gaps need to be filled, how would it need to function and its applications, and kind of communicating the utility of that. That is right now kind of a separate or autonomous work group with a couple of people on it. We have a similar work group that is trying to refresh itself and see what progress can be made on the inland lakes and streams previous recommendations. So that is a group that Mike Gallagher's leading with, and he's trying to engage quite a few people, not only council members, but some outside help to see how we might make a run at that in the future. We have another work group that is Jim Milne and John Yelich has mentioned that is biting off for us one particular kind of issue with continued well driller education opportunities for I guess probably more precise or accurate or consistent geologic information reporting, but they also found kind of cross synergy with a few other things that needed to be discussed by the same sort of small group of people, and so they are meeting and working on that. We've spent a little bit of time talking with the DNR about tools for stream reclassification, and we heard from Todd Feenstra, who talked to us about the Cass County pilot study, but in specific regards to the data collection that occurred there and what insights we might learn from that. Next meeting is next week, June 30th, 9 to 11, and we will be talking and diving into the new data acquisition priorities. We expect Ralph from the USGS to help us understand what the current status of different data types are, and then we're going to hear a little bit about TU's stream flow, base flow, index flow sort of monitoring, and then kind of dig into both surface water, I guess stream flow, groundwater data, and geologic data information needs and priorities. So the outlook there is that we are working. We're not coming forward yet with any recommendations for the full council. None of that is ready yet. I'll be honest. I think that we're going to use our available time. Over the next month or two, we may be adding a meeting to help us have an appropriate amount of time to come across the line with recommendations and associated budgets with those. But probably by August, you will see us come into you guys with kind of close to final recommendations from us. And we will continue to sort of check in with the implementing past recommendations committee so that there aren't any surprises, and that they can have the greatest sense of what we will be coming with and what they look like, so that we don't wait until the last minute to surprise them with anything. I think that's a pretty good overview. Are there any questions about the data committee's work to this point? Okay. All right. Moving along. Let's hear from either Doug and or Laura from the implementing past recommendations committee.
All right. Well, I'll chime in here, and Laura, if you could help fill in the gaps. So if we could go to the next slide, and I see this didn't really transfer too well, but I will send this back out to Christine so that we can send this out. So there was an idea that to help us stay focused in what we're supposed to be doing as not only the implementation committee, but then also as a full water use advisory council, let's come up with a short little strategic plan, kind of a vision and a mission. And this was kind of a little sidebar that we said, boy, should we have something like this or should we not? Well, let's create it. We did a lot of cutting and pasting from what the statute actually has for our charge is, but we added a little mission and vision statement up top. Not really sure if that's something the full council would want to take action and really adopt or move forward. But our thought is let's just present it to the full council. And as I say, I'll send it out in a better form so you guys can read it. Not maybe for implement or for official action, but maybe some of the statements could be used in the final report. So we just spent a little bit of time on this, and we said, well, since we put it together, we may as well show it and share it with the full council for your thoughts and or possible inclusion into the 2020 full report. So I apologize for however this looks. It's blinking all over on my screen, so that's a little weird. So let's go to the next one. Ads does the same thing. So this is, again, before we sent this out. Now, Christine kind of mentioned about the fact of not having committee members or committees in the final report. We kind of were brainstorming along that same idea. And so the example here of this one says improve communication between WellLogic and the WUAC. So we went in and said, okay, well, data committee's talking about this, implementation committee talked about this. There were some older recommendations, the TU 3.1. Let's try to start lumping ideas in kind of into bigger topics so that when we get all of these different ideas from the committees, that we can meld them into maybe one of the topics is just data collection methodology and standards. Maybe another topic would be modeling using improved data collection. And so what are some of the high level themes and theories that we pulled us under to help us generate that final report. Not quite sure what it'll look like right now. We are in brainstorming mode because we don't have all the information from the committees that you've been working on. So if we can go to the next slide. That's kind of what Christine mentioned as well, though, and I think she laid it out, that one of the things we talked about was that she was going to be presenting at the full council. So this will help us. What she laid out today will help our committee kind of formulate what maybe the desired outcome is going to be. But those were things that we were looking for. Is could there be a problem statement? What is it that you are trying to solve? Where are we at? What is the issues at hand? What are steps that you need to achieve that task? And what is the desired outcome? So as Christine said, maybe it's legislative action, maybe it's a university study, maybe it's a department work group to be able to come up with that outcome, and then the estimated cost. And we've already dealt with all of that discussion. So that's pretty much where we've at. Right now, we feel we're kind of in a holding pattern until other committees submit some information to us. So once that comes, as I say, I'll send around our kind of document that we seem to be drafting and tweaking and working. But just keep in mind, none of us have the ownership of what information and what tasks are in there. All we are simply trying to do is to just organize it and put it in some type of flowable collection of information and tasks.
Thanks, Doug. I don't have anything to add to that. That was a good summary.
Anybody have any questions for the committee? Okay. Well, I encourage everybody, if even if you don't have questions now, and I know this venue isn't the most conducive or friendly to asking questions, but if you have some, you have thoughts, comments, even if you've not been participating in any of the committees, please feel free to email those committee chairs and do share your thoughts, concerns, ideas, suggestions with everybody, even if you're not a regular attendee in the committees. All right, moving forward, Models Committee, Dave and Jim.
Yeah, so I'll start with this, and if Jim wants to add anything in, he's more than welcome to. So I will be talking from a document that came out with the meeting notice, topics for the Models Committee. And this we do look at as a living document, so we're updating it on a regular basis. And if you read the status column under each, it'll give you a real good handle as to where we are. And we're not on that slide, just, yep, stay there. So our goal is to get recommendations with budget by early September and have things ready to go through the whole process. So the things that we are working on, it is our goal to finish all of these. So I'll run through quickly to give you an update as to where we are. So the first one is the reviewing the groundwater model report format. We have not forgotten about it. We intend to have a meeting in July. Hopefully we'll be able to work things out then and be able to have a final document there. Number 3, which is reviewing the Michigan hydrologic framework. We've been waiting for input. We still haven't gotten any, but we are actively working with the data committee. And the goal is to make sure that the data recommendations are really consistent with what the needs are for fully developing Michigan hydrologic framework. So I think we're in good shape with that, and we'll continue working with that. The fourth one is dealing with possibly updating parameters such as the storage coefficient in the water withdrawal assessment tool. And this one, I thought we might have a recommendation for you, but we're not at that point. We've been doing some very good work on this, and I want to commend Dave Lush for some very good analysis that has been helping us with this. So what he's been doing is he's been using WellLogic as the data source. He's looking at the density of wells in areas, especially within a water management area. What was the density? Looking at the percent of wells that are confined, And in areas where we have a very high preponderance of wells that are unconfined, like say in the 80–90% range, we may be able to identify those as areas where we could use a different storage coefficient. We're not at the point yet where we, as a committee, feel comfortable making that recommendation, but we've looked at southwestern Michigan pretty intensely, Ottawa and Muskegon counties. So we've covered a lot of the areas that have heavy irrigation. We're going to look at, we being Dave Lush, again, thank you, Dave, for the work you're doing. We're going to look at more detail of the depth of the WUAC data, looking at confined and unconfined wells, what the proximity is. So we're going to gain more information, more insight as to what the data shows us. One of the things that did come out of our discussion is that the type of analysis that Dave Lush has done would be very valuable in the site-specific review. So even if we don't come up with a recommendation for an amendment to or an adjustment to the tool itself, we do believe we're onto something that will be very helpful for the site-specific review process. So we will pursue a proposal for that, and we may have a recommendation for you as far as the tool goes as well. We'll see on that. Last meeting, I presented a document I called The Process to Update the Water Withdrawal Assessment Process and Screening Tool. Margaret from the Attorney General's office had a chance to look at that. As a result of her review, there's no changes to the document. The conclusions basically that the things that we've proposed can be done without a change of statute, that she's agreed with that. So we feel very good about that. So the document will stand as written, and the types of things that we're looking at anyway, we don't feel like we have to go to the legislature on that. There'll be things that the council can recommend and the department can decide if these should be done. We are also we are forming another technical work group to look at, are there tools for streamflow depletion that should be developed for the department and its program. And so we'll have a technical work group looking at that one as well. We're going to give a presentation in just a minute here on the downstream accounting and the return flow accounting. We've been very active on that. I just want to comment a couple things on that, is that this is an important question that was left over from an earlier council. DNR has been very active in pursuing this, so they've actually funded a study with Michigan State University. The work on it the last few months, unfortunately, has stopped because of COVID-19, but we still have plans to push forward, and Troy in a few minutes will give an update on that important work. I'll just finish up a few other things here. We do want to look at models as something that could be used in the Michigan Hydrologic Framework. One model we particularly want to look at is the Cass County one. The data committee has talked with Todd about that. The models committee, we're waiting for a meeting with Todd and some of the interested parties and the department that we think it's important for those groups to get together and hash out their any concerns they have and how they're interpreting the model. Once they're done with that review, we want to jump in as a models committee and take a look at this, because we think that this type of model is the kind of thing that we want to see used as part of the framework and used as part of the process and better managing water resources as we move forward in the state. The last thing I want to comment on is that the data committee forwarded to us whether a statistical update is needed for index flows. We've decided at this point, rather than try to rush through that, and we've got our plate pretty full, we're going to wait till next year on that topic. So if you look through the write-up, you can see which ones we've said we're waiting till next year. All the other ones that we're working on, we will have recommendations for this year. So any questions for me before we go to Troy? And Troy will give an update on the downstream accounting. So any questions for me or Jim? Any comments or questions?
Dave, thanks for that update. And it's a lot to absorb, so I apologize if you mentioned this and I missed it. I know that you were working with John Yelich and Mike and Buddy Sebastian on some issues around the hydrologic framework and making sure that the data collection piece of that framework, is sort of central to the idea behind, you know, if you're gonna develop models that are specific to regions, they've got to be based on, you know, on that good data collection. Have you guys been able to kind of work something out for that process to be able to move forward?
I'm still waiting for input from them, but we are actively working with the data committee, and they're involved with the data committee too. So hopefully we'll be able to work things out there. If there's other issues, I guess we'll deal with them when they come up.
Okay.
I can comment.
Hey, Laura, this is Mike Frederick. Oh, sorry, John was going to speak.
No, Mike, go ahead. Go ahead, Mike.
Well, part of this is our fault, Laura. This is not Dave's fault. Just Buddy has been swamped, and I'm obviously, you know, he's not getting compensated for this. So getting him timed where he can get with John and Dave is a little bit more of a challenge right now. So that's on our fault. I just appreciate Dave being patient with us.
Okay, and my comment is that I'm drafting up the comments to send over to Buddy right now so that he can go ahead and review, and then we can get a hold of Dave.
Okay, look forward to it.
Awesome, thanks. I appreciate that. I did have one other question, if you don't mind.
Sure.
And this is related to the project that Dave Lush is starting to work on. And Dave, maybe you can chime in on this, about looking at how to change parameters in the tool, you know, in order to kind of look more broad scale at how that work can be done throughout the water withdrawal assessment program or site specific review. Are you guys looking at doing some kind of a like pilot or trial set to take a look at how those parameters change and what the effects are, maybe on a subset of known uses that you have, or ones that have had extensive hydrogeo work done around them, either because they were part of a study or because they've had you know, SSRs with significant work done on them, so that you can kind of compare what are you seeing when you start changing model parameters versus what are the conditions on the ground?
Yes, and Dave has been doing a great job, and he's pulled together information where there has been pump tests done either for municipal wells or other things, and bringing that into the mix of information he's drawn from WellLogic. So we are looking at that, and the thought is if we do come forward with a recommendation, part of the recommendation would be a pilot study. But Dave's doing a very detailed analysis for us that helps us understand what the implications are of this type of analysis.
Okay.
On that point, this is James. And we've talked a little bit about sequencing these various things. It seems to be that is intricately tied into downstream accounting, and that you really can't do both of them, you know, simultaneously, you know, separately. Does it make more sense to figure out downstream accounting first and then look at this scale question second?
I guess I'm not sure I see the connection you're seeing, James, so maybe you need to explain that a little bit more.
Well, maybe I'm misunderstanding kind of what you were just getting at there. I thought we were talking a little bit about would you change kind of your scale of stream reach that you were looking at? No. That
is not what this is. This would be that right now there's certain assumptions that are applied statewide as far as the parameters that are in the tool. And so the idea is there are some areas of the state, maybe small, but there may be areas of the state where we could change some of those parameters, such as the storage coefficient for that area, and that would be scientifically sound and a good thing to do that would both make the tool more accurate for that area and expedite the process. That's what we're thinking. So it's really independent from the downstream accounting.
All right, thanks.
Okay, and if I can comment for a moment, what we as MGS are doing is we are looking at validating the locations in WellLogic, and I have right now about 20 students working on this, and it's a very hard, diligent process that we're doing right now. But the bottom line is that we're finding a minimum 30% of the wells are not within the right section or are more than a mile away from where they were supposed to be. And so what Dave and I have communicated together is that we are nearly finished with Kalamazoo County, which has almost 28,000 wells in it, and those include the scan logs as the other ones. And to try and see if we can identify a demonstration area where we also have a modeling program that was in there at the same time. So we're just trying to use validated WellLogic location data to go ahead and take a look at the parameters that we're outlining right now.
And thank you, John. And that is something that we think is very important. We do want this location information corrected, and for anything to be applied, that would have to be part of the proposal as well, that work is completed. If there aren't any more questions right now, I'd like to introduce Troy Zorn, who works with DNR, and he's going to give a presentation on the downstream accounting.
Okay, thanks, Dave. I think I have some slides up there that maybe Jim can pull up. I need visual aids. Here's our work group with Jim Melanani, the Baron, Dave Hamilton, Howard Reeves here. We have Dana Infante in her lab. Dana's at Michigan State. You can go to the next one. So just a little bit of background. You can go to the next slide. Thanks. The 2008 compact identified, one more, back. Thank you. We go forward. Thank you. The compact identified a common resource-based conservation standard of no significant individual or cumulative adverse impacts. And the attempts are to prevent individual or cumulative impacts. And so we're really focused on that cumulative aspect. Go to the next slide, please. So the kind of looking at the assessment program, and when a new large quantity withdrawal is proposed, the tool looks at adjacent water management areas. And so, for example, if we're looking at a withdrawal in the orange water management area, the tool will look at the adjacent areas, which are the ones in tan. And so you get for larger streams, like this is actually the Muskegon River around Percy, the whole catchment of that stream includes the whole area in green. So there's many water management areas there. So for these larger systems, the water withdrawal program could assess more waters available than is the case, since withdrawals aren't accounted for in the entire catchment. And so those are the cumulative effects that we're really trying to get a handle on. You can go to the next slide. And as Dave mentioned, this has been like a standing issue for a while with the program. Understanding cumulative impacts of multiple withdrawals within a watershed is paramount to a sustainable approach for both the aquatic ecosystem and human users of the resource. So this is kind of a key aspect of the system. Next one. So there's been some steps to this process leading up to this. First thing we did as background is we acquired the withdrawal data by water management area from DEQ, and then working with Dana Infante, and she's a professor at Michigan State with her lab. I don't understand why it's flashing, but please try and ignore it. They have data that shows how all the water management areas were linked, and they reverse the topological coding within that data set. So for a given water management area, you can look upstream and see what's happening in all the upstream water management areas that feed into it. You can just skip to the next slide. And so part of what Dana's lab did is they could show how many, for each water management area of the state, how many water management areas feed into it. And so for the water management areas in white or in gray, those are headwater systems, or those are water management areas that had one stream feeding into them. And then as the colors get darker or more blue here, there's progressively more and more water management areas that drain into that downstream water management area. And to the extent that some of these sites that are in blue have 50 to 100 or more water management areas feeding into it. So when there's a withdrawal proposed and you're just looking at the adjacent water management area, there's a lot happening upstream that can be missed. So those are the cumulative effects that are currently not being factored in the system. You can go to the next slide. So in summary, our work demonstrated that cumulative withdrawals and return flows could be readily incorporated into the water withdrawal assessment program. This is something that's technically feasible, and addressing this deficiency would maintain the public's confidence in the water withdrawal program. And it would help to fill a key knowledge gap. And as part of this preliminary exercise we did, we could see that this type of an approach would be useful for identifying areas for further investigation, areas that might have a lot of cumulative withdrawals. You can go to the next slide. So that's kind of some of the background. You can skip ahead to the next one. Oh, can you hear me, Jim?
Yeah, we can hear you.
You're cutting in a little bit. You're cutting in and out, but
you go to the. Oh,
do you want the update slide or the summary slide?
I don't know. Go back one. I'm not sure where I am now.
Status. Okay, you're on the status slide now.
Okay, so this part, the part I kind of introduced there, we presented after the council in December 2018 developed the final report outlining the issue and got the council's approval to look into this more and work to incorporating downstream accounting into the system. Of course, the council was just disbanded at the end of that year, reformed, and then we brought this before the council in their first meeting in July 2019, and they reconfirmed the previous council's decision. And our group has been meeting since then, in person and with calls. And we've been working collaboratively with Dr. Dane and Ponte's lab. And so the primary issues that we're kind of focusing on is they're kind of identified as obviously the first one is that the water withdrawal program is not assessing cumulative impacts for larger systems. So that's really the primary thing we want to address. We also wanted to incorporate return flows into the system. We knew that was a big piece that was missing and was important. And then as we got into these discussions, our second issue there arose is there seems to be some concern about being more restrictive, which the cumulative accounting by accounting for everything going on in the river's catchment, that will probably show more withdrawals are happening than have been previously been detected in previous evaluations. So there's some concern about maybe being more restrictive by incorporating catchment level accounting. When on the ground, some folks are not necessarily seeing obvious effects in systems that are thought to already have considerable withdrawal. So one aspect we're interested in is, to what degree is the wetter weather that we're having during the period since the pool went into effect having an effect on base flows and streams. So you can go to the next slide. So where are we at? Here's kind of where we're at now. Downstream accounting, I think we basically probably all agree that this is just kind of a technical issue that we think can be readily addressed. There are the devil's in the details, of course, but it's the basics of doing it are not beyond our reach as a group. However, I think it would be desirable if we could have some increased comfort in implementing the downstream accounting into the system. Then to address the second item, we are interested in predicting index flows in the water withdrawal assessment program. They were estimated from a drier period, so since 2006, our climate and weather has gotten considerably wetter the last number of years, last decade and a half. And so as an exercise for us to better understand how this might affect what we're seeing in the field today, we're updating, through work with Dana's lab, we're updating the index flow model, and then we're going to do some predictions of the index flows under different precipitation scenarios to assess the degree to which weather conditions in recent years might be influencing index flows and obscuring some of the withdrawal effects that some of us might be expecting to see. And we're hoping that this increased understanding of our current state will hopefully provide some further support to move forward on protecting stream fish communities from the effects of cumulative withdrawals. But I think this is just, you know, wanting to get a better understanding of what's going on in our current state. And you can go to the next slide. Our plan is to incorporate return flows. What we've been talking about most recently, and I think we're maybe working towards, is applying typical return flow values by water use sector for the Great Lakes region. The withdrawals have been permitted through the program. And so these are, for example, we're showing some flows from Schaefer and Runkle 2007. And so they surveyed water withdrawal and return flow rates around the Great Lakes Basin in several different states, and have come up with some average values based on looking at withdrawals at 100, sometimes more instances per sector. So you can see some of the return flow rates that are average return flow rates by sector, and those might be the type of values that could be applied to permitted large quantity withdrawals in our area. But this is, you know, something our group is going to be discussing and working to set these values up and make sure we have agreement on them before moving forward. And then I think there's one more slide. Can you go to the next one, Jim? Yeah, since COVID-19 restrictions came in March, we've made kind of limited progress. Our real horsepower on getting some of this work done has been the external funding to Dana and Fonte's lab, and they've been doing a lot of the technical aspects of the project, the modeling and the GIS work, and their efforts have been paused due to COVID-19. They're hoping to be able to resume getting back on the project and working full speed within about a month or so. And I think that is the extent of our update. Is there anything else, Dave or Jim, that needs to be added?
Oh, that's good. Thank you, Troy.
John Yelich, I see you have your hand up. Is that for a question that you got? Don't forget to unmute yourself.
All right. Hey, thank you, Dave. Just a minor question. Are you guys in the models committee sort of going to help shepherd along the downstream accounting and return flows when that comes time? Whatever
Yes.
that may be for recommendations, will you kind of help shepherd that, or do you need it through a different autonomous mechanism?
No, we plan to bring it through the committee.
Perfect. All right. Thank you. Thank you. Does anybody have any questions for Dave and or Troy before we move on?
Yeah, this is Dave Lush. Either Dave Hamilton or Troy. It's not clear to me what the intention is for downstream accounting. Is the premise of this whole work that if, let's say, 600 gallons a minute is withdrawn from an upstream water management area, that is debited against all downstream water management areas?
The idea, Dave, is to figure out what that answer should be. And so that the initial work was doing exactly what you said, so that if you take a certain amount of the upstream, that's directly debited downstream. First obvious concern is that neglects return flow. And so we're looking at that. We also need to understand, as we're going through this, are the numbers realistic? And so we're going to have to look at that as well. One of the things that we're looking at is the effect of climate, and our changes in the climate that we've seen wetter these last few years. Is that what we're actually seeing? And so we're trying to understand things, because when we're done with this, we want to make a recommendation that we believe is realistic, so that we're not just taking out the number just because arithmetically it should be, but that it does make sense and that we're putting the pluses that should be there as well, and that we're adequately representing the drop. So we're moving this forward, but the idea is that if withdrawals are made upstream water management areas, do they have an effect downstream? The answer is yes. How do we
So it seems to me there are two other confounding factors. First is the spatial nature of the return flows. Oftentimes, the facility location, the use point of the withdrawal is not where the return flow goes to. So we have to get a handle on where the outflow pipe is, essentially, because it might be in a different water management area, and that water management area might be upstream or downstream of the water management area where the withdrawal is. Secondly, in order for this to come into hydrologic balance, we would also have to have some way to figure out which water management areas are super gaining streams, essentially, where the groundwater flux coming into the water management area significantly increases the base flow in comparison to the surface flow coming in from all upstream water management areas.
Those are good points, Dave.
Yeah, I think, those are very good points, yeah. And there are areas that this could be looked at in greater detail, and I think you identified some. But I think what we're trying to do at this point is be accounting for what's going on in the whole catchment of each water management area, and especially these larger water management areas that consist of many smaller water management areas that are not considered when withdrawal proposals come in.
And of course, the other issue is the one that Dave Hamilton mentioned about the half max rule that we have put off until next year for deliberation on. But that is a spatial constraint, basically, that would fly in the face of downstream accounting. So those two issues of downstream accounting and the half max rule are intimately related and need to be addressed simultaneously.
Thanks, Dave. We know this is a complex issue, and we're not trying to miss any of the parts, but we want to make sure that we pick them up in a way that we can analyze and make sense out of, and that when we're done, that we come to an agreement that says that's the way of handling it. Thank you for pointing those out.
Thank you for the update. Thank you very much. All right, let's move on. And if you're still off mute, go ahead and put yourself on. And now, either Pat and or Jason, can you give us your update from the New Topics Committee?
Brian, before you move on, I'm seeing on the participant list that there's a couple of people here who have hands up that they wanted to speak. I don't want to miss them.
No, I appreciate that. I have my participant list up, and I am for whatever reason, I am not seeing any hands. So can you help me identify that, because it is not showing on mine?
I see Frank and I see John Yelich.
All right, let's start with Frank. You go first, and then we'll move to John afterwards.
Yeah, I just wanted to, an observation that I thought of in this is that in the return flow analysis that was given, one of the things that we need to keep in mind is that what's being drawn is generally groundwater, and what's returning is going to return at a different temperature. So it's not just the flow of the river, but also the temperature wherever this thing is returned, and we need to keep that in mind. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, Frank. That's always on my mind too. The temperature is really what a lot of the mechanisms of impact are based off of. So it's just the volume to volume doesn't quite explain the impact. So I know we're working on that too. Thank you very much. John Yelich.
I'm okay. It's already been answered.
Okay, perfect. All right. And for everybody else, before we go on to the new topics, if anybody is technologically savvy and has ideas for us for the next meeting to prevent the seizure-inducing flickering, please email us. But we'll just try to continue on and bear with us for the rest of this meeting for a little longer.
Yeah, that may be a fault of the internet connection on my end, Brian.
Okay. Yeah. Some of them are fine, some of them aren't. But we'll get it figured out for next time.
That's why I use Panera parking lot.
Perfect. All right. Do we have Pat or Jason presenting today?
I can provide the update. We had 4 meetings since the last council meeting, and it was primarily dealing with water user groups. You can put it on that second slide. There's not a whole lot. So on the May 5th, we met as a group and we talked about the 2014 report and the recommendations from that report as kind of the outline. And it was a good update in that we started to get into the educational materials in there. And so we decided to have a smaller group just to focus on those educational materials. We met again on the 28th of May, and we got a good discussion about water law. And then we kind of coalesced around this idea of trying to come up with a manual for water user groups, trying to help them to form what would be needed, not only the educational materials, but just kind of more of a how-to guide. And so with that, a smaller subgroup was formed, and Emily has agreed to lead that. And we've met twice on the 8th and 15th of June. And the purpose of that group is really just to come up with an outline for this manual and to come up with a way of engagement as that manual is developed. Emily had used some of her experience with I'm losing my mind now for a second, with the development of the harbors, that's it, safe harbors. So it was a collaborative experience, and she thought that would work well here. So we've been making some progress. So I think the plan that we have is to finish this outline of the water users group, take it back to the new topics committee, and get that kind of hashed out, and then hopefully we can have that ready for the full council's consideration here shortly. We're hoping to get moving on the water efficiency and conservation group. I don't have the capacity to get going on that, so Kelly and Jason, we're going to try to take the lead on that. So I'd like to turn it over to Kelly. I see her hands raised too, so I'd like to give her a chance to jump in and provide some more updates.
Thanks, Pat. We did have the inaugural meeting of the Conservation Subcommittee of the subcommittee. After some brief introductions, Emily Fennell provided a background for us on the Office of Great Lakes and their role in coordinating reporting under the Great Lakes Compact, which specifically includes their annual and 5-year reporting on water conservation and efficiency programs that are implemented by Eagle and MDARD. It came to us pretty quickly that the current committee members really wanted to reach out to this full council to ask for help in surfacing, identifying participants within your circles of influence that would be particularly valuable to serve on this committee. We felt that we really had just this really small group of people, and that we weren't being very inclusive when it came to looking at conservation practices that should be included, that we should be looking at. So we would like to reach out to everyone here to ask for help in identifying folks that we should ask to participate on these committee meetings. And then we figured once we were fully formed with the group, we would first take a look at prioritizing those 2014 recommendations for water conservation and efficiency, and then concurrently identifying what resources might be necessary for us to look at to move to move on the new topic areas. So we talked about suggested resources that are not limited to, but do include EPA's Water Sense program and the MIL pilot project that happened in South Carolina. We may even want to consider the Cass County project at some point, but really we figured some of the topics that we would cover would be the types of conservation of water, water replenishment options, and other things that are kind of out of the box, such as trading of groundwater credits and offsets, and what some options might be to include some property offsets as well. So we didn't get very far, but we did get at least a start on the committee and taking a look at kind of where we want to go and what the goals of the committee would be. So I'll toss it back out to everyone now. I don't know if people have someone in mind that kind of popped in their head right away that would be good to serve, or if you would prefer to shoot me an email or send Laura an email that she could pass along. Sorry to give you more work there, Laura. But some way to pass along to us people that you think that would be great participants.
So this is Abby Eaton. At one time I thought I was on this committee. I had to miss one meeting during the COVID thing in early May, and I haven't seen any announcements of additional meetings. So I should probably be on this and the water user group.
All right, very good. Thanks, Abby. I'll get you added.
And this is Frank Edwigishik. I didn't notice any announcements of meetings either. So.
Ooh, Frank, I don't know that I have your contact information anywhere. Am I allowed to put my email in the chat and then you could shoot me an email? Is that allowable?
I can get that to you, Kelly.
Ah, cool. Thank you.
Okay. Any other updates from the committee?
I have a question for Pat.
Okay, go ahead. And yes, go ahead and jump in because I cannot seem to get my participants list to show anybody's hands raised. So go ahead and just try to jump in. I apologize.
All right, John Yelich here. Pat, is that because of the Water Executive Committee that we're working on together in Ottawa County, is there a benefit to perhaps having Paul Sachs involved in some of this?
Yes, Paul Sachs he has been on the subgroup that has been looking at the manual.
Okay.
One of the discussions we've really had is, do we focus on a manual when you already get to the point of needing a water users group and you have 30 days to come up with a solution, or do you do more of a proactive type of a group where you have longer to build up that those relationships and come up with a solution? But Paul is involved.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? Okay. Well, thank you very much. And if you get any other follow-up ideas, please go ahead and email them directly. If you need help, you can always route it to one of us co-chairs and let us know who it's for, and we'll certainly pass it around if you need somebody's email address. All right, thank you both. All right, the next item of business is I think fairly simple. as we've been thinking about our timelines and the work of the committees, and frankly, I think, you know, I don't think that this council really lost a lot of time due to the COVID response and quarantine, but I do feel like we lost a little bit of time for very good reasons. You know, the committees are working, as I think everybody can tell, as fast as they really can, and we'll probably be adding some meetings to try to make this timeline for the report. But we've been we've been meeting every other month, and we've identified the fact that we are going to probably need another meeting going into final recommendations. Recognizing we need, you know, all recommendations brought by committees to be brought forward and have adequate time for everybody on the council to be comfortable with them and reach consensus on them, and then still have time for report drafting with them. So we've proposed adding a meeting that we did not have down for the month of September. The date that at this point appears to be the best possible is September 15th. We recognize that with a large group, it might be inevitable that does not work for some of you. We will do our best to try to accommodate, get thoughts, feedback, and try to, you know, hopefully get your alternates there. But please mark your calendars for September 15th. At this point, we'll still assume that we will likely be electronically meeting. Any questions, concerns, opposition to adding this meeting to our annual calendar?
Is that 1 to 3 again?
Yeah, you know, I'm not sure if we've absolutely pinned it down, but I think that is a good thing to mark down, and that is likely what we will try to stick with, unless we hear from, you know, we get separate emails from enough people saying, you know, I can't do it in the afternoon, but I can do it in the morning or something odd. Yeah, plan on that.
Yeah, I think our preference is for the afternoon, particularly with fingers crossed. If there's a possibility of being able to do some in-person stuff again, we want to make sure that people have the travel time that they need to be able to get there if they do want to participate in person as well.
Not hearing any strong opposition, speak now if you do. Please put that down on your calendars and make plans for that. Next item for discussion here should be open comments. As we've had some public comment opportunity at the beginning of the meeting, this is really an opportunity for anybody, member or public non-member. If anybody has any comments that they'd like to share, this is your time to do so. So try to jump in again because I can't see hands, and we'll just try to do it orderly if there are comments.
Yeah, hi Brian, this is Bob Otwell calling, and it's kind of more of a question. I was going to kind of jump into some of the different subcommittees, but I wasn't really sure where. But I think my understanding is that most of this program deals with the glacial aquifers, not the bedrock aquifers. I've spent a little bit of time looking at Ottawa County, where you've got some issues of, you know, overdrawing groundwater, which is also causing chemical problems in the groundwater. So I guess I just wondered, you know, where that fits in. If there's, I really like the makeup of this group in terms of all the different interested parties that are at the table, and I'm just wondering, you know, is that maybe a future topic, some of the bedrock issues, or is there some other group that's maybe looking at, you know, not only Ottawa, but some of the thumb area counties that are having some of those same issues?
Good question. I will take a shot, but I'm sure I am not the most qualified person on this committee to answer you. But through time, we have talked and discussed bedrock aquifers in some regards, maybe several regards. We have not really focused on it because thus far the focus has really been on preventing the adverse resource impacts to water dependent natural resources. And because of the hydrologic limited or no connection with some of those surface water bodies and water dependent natural resources, that has not been quite the priority of addressing the glacial.
Brian, this is Jim O with Eagle. If I can respond to Bob's question.
Please.
So the water use, large quantity withdrawals, we do have registrations for bedrock aquifer wells. I would say the majority of the groundwater wells withdrawals in the program are glacial aquifers, but we do have bedrock aquifer withdrawals in some areas of the state. We do, if you go back to, let me go back up to my slides. The water use area of concern. This figure, number 3, the Dickinson Creek. That's a cold transitional stream in Calhoun County. That area around Marshall, that's been one area where the Marshall Formation bedrock aquifer is pretty close to the surface. And the way the tool was originally designed, there was a bedrock pass feature that was built in that assumed that the Marshall Formation, the Saginaw Formation aquifers were not hydraulically connected to streams. And we since discovered that, well, that's not true everywhere. Areas like around Marshall where it is pretty shallow, there does seem to be a hydraulic connection. And that has created some potential problems where bedrock pass authorizations were given where we had, turns out that, yeah, they likely are connected to surface water. So we credited those depletions, which may put some of those watersheds at or approaching depletion state. So that's one area where we're aware of bedrock issues that are of concern. Water quality issues, the water use program really doesn't deal with water quality per se. However, in central Ottawa County, as you're aware, you've got the overpumping in the Marshall Formation that has caused upwellings of brine, leading to chloride contamination and impacting the potable aquifers. So there's areas in central Ottawa County where drilling a deep vertical well really isn't an option. So you got a lot of competition for the shallow glacial aquifers. And then another area, the thumb historically with some arsenic levels, elevated arsenic in groundwater also from the Marshall. So there are some bedrock issues that we're aware of. It's not a frequent topic, but it's still out there. And we would welcome further conversations as we go along in the council.
And Bob, this is Dave Hamilton. If I might jump in, if I understand your question right, you are looking specifically at the water quality issues. And that's something that wasn't addressed when this program was developed. And there was a disclaimer that was given out initially. I assume it's still in there, but it'll say that it doesn't, doesn't say what the quality of the water is going to be, because there are areas where there are groundwater problems, quality problems with groundwater. So that's not something that was addressed in this program. So from a systematic point of view, that's not a topic that's being addressed here. It certainly is a problem in parts of the state, and maybe there's some things that should be done, but at least at this point, it's not something that's been addressed through the water withdrawal assessment process.
This is Dave Lush. I might mention that as part of the Ottawa County groundwater modeling effort a few years back, there was also a part of that contract funded by MDARD that allowed us to do a analysis of the southern 2/3 of the Lower Peninsula and look at this issue of how widespread is the chloride contamination issue from upwelling bedrock groundwaters. By our analysis, 17 counties in southern lower Michigan have water quality issues associated with that hydrogeologic condition. And there's a write-up in the Ottawa County final report, which I believe is still hosted on the Ottawa County Planning and Performance website. Pat could comment if I got that website wrong, but the public can get that report there.
Well, thank you. Thank you, everybody. We are actually just about out of time. So, and I didn't hear a lot of people clamoring in. So I being up against time, I probably won't take any more open comments unless somebody speaks up right now and says that they did indeed have a desire for another one. Okay. All right. The last two items are simple and easy, which is good with about a minute left of the meeting time. The next meeting is listed as August 18th at 1 p.m. I think everybody should still plan on that being another video-based conference. If you have any questions about the details of that, please let me know. Other than that, I would accept a motion to adjourn.
So moved. Dave Hamilton.
Support Frank Enowagishi.
There's a second. Is anybody opposed to adjourning on time? Not hearing any. I will say meeting is adjourned. Thank you to everybody for giving us 2 hours and good discussion and good updates. Everybody keep up the good work, and we will see you again very soon.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you.